Far below the reach of sunlight, where the ocean becomes a world of silence, pressure, and endless black, something extraordinary drifts through the abyss. Long, silver, and almost unreal, the oarfish moves like a living ribbon through the deep, so strange, so rarely seen, that for centuries it was mistaken for a sea serpent. This is not just another fish, this is one of the most mysterious creatures on Earth. A giant from the darkness that has inspired fear, myth, and scientific fascination in equal measure. Tonight, we descend into that hidden world to uncover the truth behind the oarfish, the elusive deep-sea giant that still feels more like a legend than a living animal. Before we dive into the dark and discover what makes the oarfish one of the ocean's most haunting mysteries, subscribe to Abyssal Chronicles, leave a like, and join us on this journey into the unknown depths below. Imagine a night so deep that sunlight has been dead for hundreds of meters. No horizon, no moon, no reef, no familiar shape. Just black water, stacked endlessly beneath black water, crushed by pressure so immense it would crumple steel. And drifting through that darkness is something that looks less like a fish than a prophecy. It is silver like a blade. It is longer than a car. Its head wears a blood-red crown. Its body moves not with the powerful thrust of a shark, but with the slow, ghostly ripple of a ribbon in zero gravity. If you saw it once, really saw it, you would understand why sailors turned it into a serpent, why myths called it an omen, and why even modern scientists armed with cameras, genetics, and deep-sea robots still speak of it with a kind of awe. This is the oarfish, Regalecus glesne, the longest bony fish on Earth, a creature so rarely seen alive that for most of human history it might as well have belonged to legend. The oarfish does not enter the human world the way other animals do. It does not patrol coastlines. It does not leap from the water. It does not fill fishing nets in great numbers. Most of the time it lives where human eyes do not go, in pelagic open water, usually from roughly a few dozen meters down to around 1,000 meters, with verified in situ observations in the Gulf of Mexico down to nearly 500 meters. NOAA has described that deeper midwater realm, the mesopelagic, as one of the least explored ecosystems on the planet. That matters because the story of the oarfish is not just the story of one animal. It is the story of a zone of Earth that still resists us, where our species remains a visitor, where our maps are better than our understanding, and where even a giant animal can spend centuries almost unseen. And yet the oarfish is not some ancient mistake barely hanging on. It belongs to the order Lampriformes, a strange branch of ray-finned fishes that includes other bizarre open ocean specialists. Its lineage is old, its fossil record is sparse, and that scarcity is part of its mystique. The deep sea does not preserve biographies easily. What the evidence does suggest is that oarfish-like fishes have haunted the oceans for millions of years, surviving not by dominating the sea in the dramatic way of giant predators, but by becoming exquisitely specialized for a world that punished the clumsy, the wasteful, and the loud. In that sense, the oarfish is not a relic. It is a winner. An organism refined by the open ocean into a design so strange that it feels supernatural, only because it is so perfectly adapted to a place humans were never meant to inhabit. Look at its body, and you can see evolution solving a problem in an unfamiliar language. The oarfish can reach lengths of around 8 meters in well-documented specimens, with larger claims reported, and its body is laterally compressed into a long metallic ribbon. It has no obvious shark-like bulk, no tuna-like muscle, no armor, no threatening mouthful of teeth. Instead, it seems almost impossibly thin for its length, as if it were forged from polished silver sheet and animated by current and nerve alone. A crimson dorsal fin runs nearly the full length of its body. At the head, those first dorsal rays rise into a spectacular scarlet crest, while the pelvic fins extend like 2 delicate red oars trailing beneath it, giving the fish its name. Seen in dark water, it does not resemble normal marine life. It resembles a banner carried by the abyss. Its face is stranger still. The mouth is protrusible, but usually toothless or nearly so, built not for tearing large prey apart, but for taking in smaller animals from the water column. This surprises many people because everything about the oarfish looks dramatic. It appears made for violence, but the truth is more elegant and somehow even more eerie. This long sea serpent is not a monster in the old predatory sense. It is more like a drifting hunter of opportunity, taking krill, small crustaceans, and other prey from the dim, open sea. Stomach records are rare because specimens are rare, but when scientists do get a chance to examine them, the evidence points toward a diet built from the smaller lives of the midwater world. The longest bony fish alive is, in a way, sustained by the invisible rain of tiny bodies drifting through darkness. That contradiction is one of the reasons the oarfish is so compelling. In shallow water, size often means dominance. In the deep, open ocean, size can mean something else entirely: stability, efficiency, reach, the ability to span layers of water and exploit scattered prey. Everything in the midwater is ruled by energy. Food is unpredictable. Encounters are rare. To survive there, an animal cannot merely be powerful. It must be economical. The oarfish seems to have embraced that law completely. It lacks the kind of body built for explosive speed, and instead moves through the sea by sending waves down its dorsal fin, a mode of locomotion called amiform, or undulatory fin propulsion. That lets it glide with astonishing control, almost without disturbing the water around it. In the most alien parts of Earth, stealth can look like grace. For a long time, even that movement was more rumor than knowledge. Then remotely operated vehicles changed the story. In one of the most important windows ever opened into the animal's real life, researchers observed live, apparently healthy giant oarfish in the northern Gulf of Mexico between 2008 and 2011. These were not broken carcasses on beaches, not decayed mysteries dragged up by accident, but living fish in their own world. The observations recorded oarfish at depths from the upper open ocean into the mesopelagic, including the deepest verified record at nearly 500 meters. Suddenly the myth had posture, it had behavior, it had context. And what the cameras revealed was unforgettable. An animal hanging almost vertically in the water, head up, tail down, drifting like a silver needle suspended in a black cathedral. That vertical posture may be one of the keys to understanding it. Scientists do not know everything about why oarfish hold themselves this way, but one strong idea is camouflage and feeding efficiency. In the low light of deeper water, a thin, reflective fish viewed from above or below presents very little profile. Florida Museum notes that the oarfish may float vertically to camouflage itself, and more recent explanations, including Britannica's 2026 summary, point to the same logic. In dim midwater, vertical orientation can minimize its silhouette while it searches for prey higher in the water column. Mark Benfield and others have also suggested that looking upward could help the fish detect prey, such as krill, against the faint downwelling light from the surface. So the oarfish's pose, so uncanny to us, may be an exquisite midwater strategy, part invisibility cloak, part hunting stance. Now picture the world from the oarfish's perspective. Above, a distant ceiling of diluted blue, fading by the second. Below, a shaft into black infinity. Around it drift flecks of marine snow, dead plankton, fecal pellets, fragments of bodies, the constant snowfall that feeds the deep. Lanterns of bioluminescence blink in the distance, shrimp firing defensive sparks, jellies pulsing cold light, fishes advertising or deceiving. Sound carries differently here. Time feels slower. Predators may appear as silhouettes, not forms. Prey may exist only as a flicker. In such a place, the oarfish's reflective silver skin is not decoration. It is a disappearing act. Its red fins, vivid in the shallows, sink toward darkness with depth because red light vanishes first underwater. The animal wears a royal costume, that becomes black in its own kingdom. Its biology carries more peculiarities. Adult oarfish lack a swim bladder, which means they do not rely on a gas-filled organ to maintain buoyancy the way many shallower fish do. In deep water, where pressure changes can be severe and damaging, that makes sense. Their bodies also concentrate many organs near the front, and some accounts describe the species as capable of losing a large posterior portion of the body and surviving, a startling idea that fits their ribbon-like build and the mutilated condition in which many specimens are found, though not every damaged animal should be assumed to have self-amputated. Some show evidence more consistent with predation or injury. Even in death, the oarfish refuses to be simple. It arrives on shore as a puzzle, severed, twisted, half intact, as if the abyss edits its witnesses before sending them to us. Very early life stages remain frustratingly difficult to study, and that absence of knowledge is part of the animal's fascination. Researchers have noted how little basic biological information exists for Regalecus, even compared with other large fishes. Eggs identified as belonging to Regalecus were reported from the Western Pacific using DNA barcoding, and larval work on the related Regalecus russellii has highlighted how little we truly know about the family's earliest development. Imagine that. An animal among the longest fishes alive, globally distributed through tropical and temperate seas, and yet science is still piecing together the simplest parts of its life story. We know the outline. We do not yet know the rhythm. That is why every specimen matters so much. When oarfish wash ashore, marine scientists do not just see a bizarre headline, they see a rare chance. Necropsies can reveal stomach contents, parasites, reproductive condition, tissue samples, and anatomy that otherwise remain hidden in deep water. NOAA biologist Russ Vetter helped examine stranded oarfish in Southern California and emphasized how little scientists still know about them. More recently, Scripps researchers studying rare oarfish in the lab noted that even a single carcass can provide critical material for genetics, anatomy, and archival records. In a world where we can sequence genomes and map seafloors with satellites, there is still something humbling about waiting for the sea to surrender a body so we can ask a few more questions. And when those bodies appear, the human imagination ignites on contact. The oarfish's serpentine form has likely fueled sea serpent tales for centuries. Smithsonian and natural history museums alike have noted how easy it is to see the connection. Glimpses of a long silver animal with red spines in rough water, or the sight of a partial carcass on a beach, could easily swell into stories of monsters with manes, coils, and flaming eyes. The sea has always magnified what it hides. Sailors did not need to invent the emotional truth of the oarfish. They only needed to exaggerate what was already there. The animal is real enough to make myth look reasonable. Then there is the darker folklore, the doomsday fish, the supposed herald of earthquakes and tsunamis. In Japan and elsewhere, oarfish strandings became tied to the fear that something below the seabed was stirring. After the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, stories about earlier oarfish strandings spread widely. It is an irresistible narrative. An animal from the deep rising as if pushed upward by forces too vast for humans to perceive. But when researchers tested the idea statistically, the romance weakened. A 2019 study in the Bulletin of the Seismological Society of America found no meaningful correlation between unusual appearances of deep-sea fishes, such as oarfish, and major earthquakes in Japan. The legend survives because it feels true, not because the evidence says it is. Still, myths do not persist for no reason. They persist because the animal behaves like a message even when it is not one. Healthy oarfish are seldom seen by humans. When one rises to shallow water or strands on a beach, something is probably wrong. injury, illness, stress, currents, storms, or oceanographic changes. Ocean Conservancy notes that surface appearances often indicate a fish that is sick, dying, or disoriented. So to a person encountering one at the shore, it really does feel like a boundary has been broken. A messenger has arrived from a place where messengers are not supposed to come from. The folklore is false in a scientific sense, but emotionally it makes perfect sense. The appearance of an oarfish means something is out of place. It just may not be what people once thought. What predators stalk the oarfish? What stalks anything in the open midwater? Here the answers become uncertain again. Large sharks may sometimes attack them. Some damaged specimens suggest bites rather than any neat biological self-severing. Parasites have been documented, and because so few healthy oarfish are observed in situ, almost every ecological conclusion arrives with caution tape around it. That uncertainty is not a weakness in the story, it is the story. In the deep sea, confidence is expensive. The oarfish teaches that lesson better than almost any creature. We know enough to be amazed, but not enough to be comfortable. It lives right on the border between zoology and imagination, and science has not pushed it fully to either side. There is also the question of why such a bizarre body plan survived while so many marine lineages disappeared. We cannot answer that with certainty for Regalecus alone, but we can infer something from the environment it mastered. The open ocean rewards forms that are energy efficient, wide-ranging, and able to exploit prey fields without needing reefs, seabeds, or coastlines. The oarfish is not tied to one small patch of habitat. It belongs to the great, moving architecture of the sea itself. That flexibility may be part of its resilience. Fishbase lists the species as widespread through tropical and temperate oceans and currently categorizes it via the IUCN reference it cites as least concern. That does not mean it is understood. It means the ocean still has room for ghosts. When people finally do see a living oarfish, one detail returns again and again in descriptions. It seems unreal. Videos and eyewitness accounts capture a creature that appears to hover more than swim. A metallic body flickering in ways that resemble machinery or silk or a hallucination. Noir's podcast called attention to its otherworldly beauty. Popular science coverage has emphasized how even researchers who know the taxonomy still react with wonder. This is important because wonder is not the opposite of science. Wonder is often what science feels like at the edge of knowledge. The oarfish turns experts into storytellers because the plain facts are already dramatic. A globally distributed giant, rarely seen, moving vertically through dim water, wearing a crimson crown in a realm where red becomes black. If we speculate carefully, the oarfish may also tell us something broader about the deep pelagic world. A creature this large, this specialized, and this elusive suggests an ecosystem still full of undocumented interactions. Predators we seldom witness hunting, spawning behaviors we have barely glimpsed, migrations we do not yet track, and sensory strategies tuned to gradients of pressure, light, and prey that we barely model. Its life likely intersects with nightly vertical migrations of smaller animals, with currents that connect distant seas, and with layers of the ocean whose food webs remain underdescribed. Every oarfish sighting feels isolated to us. To the ocean, it may be just one note in a vast system we have only begun to hear. And there is another reason this animal matters now. The deep sea is no longer as unreachable as it once was. Human pressure is moving downward through fishing, mining interest, pollution, warming, and changing ocean chemistry. Species we barely know are being pushed by forces we understand only in fragments. Ocean Conservancy's discussion of oarfish places them inside that larger truth. Deep-sea animals may be out of sight, but they are not outside consequence. The oarfish is not just a curiosity. It is a reminder that mystery is not emptiness. The dark ocean is alive with systems delicate enough to be damaged before they are properly known. So what is the oarfish, really? A sea serpent without malice. A giant built from restraint instead of brute force. A fish that looks like a warning, though it warns us mainly about our own ignorance. It is proof that evolution can produce forms more fantastical than folklore, and that the sea still contains animals whose ordinary behavior feels supernatural because we have not yet made it ordinary in our minds. The oarfish has survived not by conquering our world, but by remaining loyal to its own. A suspended, pressure-dark kingdom where silver becomes invisibility and red becomes night. And maybe that is why it lingers in the imagination long after the facts are told. A shark can terrify us. A whale can humble us. But the oarfish unsettles us in a different way. It seems to come from a version of Earth that runs beside our own. Familiar enough to be real. Strange enough to feel forbidden. When its body coils on a beach under daylight, it looks misplaced, like a strip of the abyss accidentally left behind by the tide. When it hangs upright in black water on an ROV camera, it looks less like wildlife footage than a visitation. We watch, and for a moment the ocean stops feeling like scenery and starts feeling like cosmos. Vast, dark, ancient, inhabited by beings whose existence does not require our notice. So the next time you hear someone call the oarfish a myth, remember that myth is not the opposite of truth. Sometimes myth is what truth looks like before we understand it. Somewhere below the reach of weather and memory, the longest bony fish on Earth is still there, drifting through black water like a living stroke of moonlight, feeding, vanishing, enduring. Not a monster, not an omen, something far more powerful than either. A real animal in a real ocean that remains, even now, one of the least explored places on this planet. And that may be the most haunting thought of all. Not that the deep sea hides creatures like the oarfish, but that it almost certainly hides more and has no obligation to reveal them to us.